Welcome to the Clique podcast. I'm Dani Watson, a mindset and manifestation expert and founder of the Clique, a company that helps women overcome their fears and limiting beliefs to create a life and business that they love. Within this podcast, I will help you get clear on what you want, identify the blocks that are holding you back, transform your mindset and raise your vibration so that you can co-create magic with the universe. If you are looking to design a life that truly sets your soul on fire and manifest more success and abundance, then you are in the right place.
Are you afraid of success? Are you afraid of perhaps stepping into your higher power and what could ultimately come with that? This is something I want to discuss in this week's episode because it was something that I was chatting about with another entrepreneur recently about why we often sabotage or block ourselves from really going all in on our dreams or really hold ourselves back from taking ourselves to that next level. Now, this is a really interesting topic because I think so often when we think about becoming successful or becoming wealthy or, really kind of creating our best lives at a surface level, we tell ourselves, this is what I want. I want to have this super successful career. I want to be financially free. I want to have this dream lifestyle. I want to have the dream home, be able to travel and just really kind of live my best life. We tell ourselves, yes, this is absolutely what we want. However, we perhaps sometimes don't always recognize the fact that we're scared of having those things. We're scared of what being successful could ultimately mean for ourselves. We're scared of actually what financially free may ultimately mean. Or, if we actually have that dream life and everything feels, perfect and we finally feel like we've made it, there's some sort of fears that can often come with that. So I want to sort of dig into some of these fears because this is definitely something I've experienced on my journey to sort of manifesting and up-leveling, that whenever it's kind of going to that next level, there's often been something that's held me back, something where, I've been self-sabotaging and it's kind of just really blocked me from going all in on really going for my desires. And it comes back to this fear of, well, what will actually happen when I have everything that I've ever asked for? Now, one of the fears that I've definitely recognized has been the fear of, leaving behind an old identity, an old life that even though perhaps doesn't serve us, it's something that we've got comfortable with. It's something that we are familiar with, and even though we perhaps, let's say we want to make a change in our life. Let's say, for example, you are in a routine at the moment and it is not lighting you up. It's not necessarily sparking joy, but it's safe. It's what you've always done. It's what you've always known. And maybe it's got quite monotonous, quite repetitive, quite predictable, but it feels quite comfortable. And so when we think about a new exciting life that we want to create for ourselves, yes, we might be thinking, wow, that sounds amazing. That sounds so exciting. But because it is the unknown, it can feel quite scary as well. So yes, on the surface level, we might convince ourselves, I want this dream life where, I'm traveling the world. Yet, because we've never experienced that before, perhaps that freedom-based lifestyle, it can perhaps feel a bit scary. Okay, so that could be one of the fears. But another thing that I definitely recognized was this fear of being different. Okay, so I've had this lifestyle and this identity, and this is what people, expect of me, and this is how people understand that I am, and these are the people that are around me that are perhaps living a similar sort of life. What happens if all of a sudden my life skyrockets in another direction? What if all of a sudden I become super successful, super wealthy, creating this incredible lifestyle? What does that mean for my existing relationships? This one's really interesting because we are tribal in nature. We are people that want to be loved and accepted by the people that are around us, okay? And this kind of goes back to, hundreds and thousands of years of conditioning where we are hardwired to want to be accepted. We want to be accepted by our tribe. Because back when we were actually living in small communities, in sort of these tribal communities and small villages, if we were ever seen as doing something different from our tribes, it could actually be something quite disastrous as a result. You know, we would be expelled, we could even be killed by our tribes. And so we have this natural tendency to want to conform. We don't want to be seen as different. And this often plays out in people's lives by people just going along with what they feel like they should do. It's often why we're so heavily influenced by, let's say, what our parents tell us, or what, you know, society expects of us, or what we learn from school, or what we kind of see around us. We're so heavily influenced by our sort of community that we just kind of go along with that without really questioning it. Because again, it comes back to this hardwired programming of being scared of being rejected. I don't want to be seen as going, you know, on my own unique path because of this fear of being rejected or, you know, being expelled from my tribe. You know, it feels dangerous for me to do something different. So let's say we're talking about, you know, stepping into your most successful, most abundant self. If you are not in a sort of an environment where you're surrounded with other people doing similar sorts of things, you know, achieving incredible levels of success in the way that you want to do so, or, you know, creating incredible amounts of wealth in the way that you want to do so. And when you start to think about you taking that path, it can feel quite scary. It's like, well, if I do something different, what will people think of me? Will they judge me? Will I be rejected by them? How will this change the dynamics of this relationship? Now, what was really interesting from my experience as well, when it came to these relationships I had with, you know, my family and my friends, it was not just doing something different from them and, you know, creating success in a different way and earning money in a different way. It was this idea of, well, will people see me differently if I all of a sudden step into this new identity of this, you know, this successful business owner, this wealthy business owner? Will all of a sudden, like, people not see me in the same way? Will that damage the relationship that I have with friends or with my family? Because this is the thing, right? You know, when we think about manifesting more for ourselves, more success, more abundance, it's not just about the things that we have, the money in the bank, the dream home, you know, the travel or whatever it is. It's not just about the things that we have, it's about who we are being. And I think if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you will know that for you to have all of those things, it first requires to change who you are being. And that can feel really, really scary. Because if we've been a certain way all of our lives and people love us for being that way, if we start thinking, well, I need to sort of up-level myself, who am I going to lose in the process? So it's this fear of perhaps losing relationships, losing that bond that you have with your family or with your friends. Okay. The other thing that came into this sort of relationship dynamic was this feeling of guilt. I think for me, it was this idea that if I was claiming my desires and if I was saying to myself, look, this is what I want for my life. I want to have this, you know, super successful life, this business, you know, the money. I want to be able to provide for my children in these incredible ways. What was that ultimately saying about how I was raised? It came with it a huge amount of guilt when I started to think about this. And it almost felt really uncomfortable discussing my financial goals or my desires for my business or the desires I had for my lifestyle with my family members, because it felt like on one level I was saying to them, what you provided for me wasn't enough. And that made me really, really upset because you know, I had a really nice childhood. Like, it definitely wasn't a luxurious childhood, but I had a really, you know, loving upbringing. And, you know, my parents did the best they could with what they had. My dad worked very, very hard. My mum was, you know, she raised us and, you know, she's very much a stay-at-home mum and was very present with us. And we had this really lovely childhood. But it felt like saying, that wasn't enough for me, and I want to be able to give my children more. And so, yeah, that came with a lot of guilt and a lot of sadness. And so, of course, when we think about our desires, we want to approach our desires from this place of, that for me is a non-negotiable. I have nothing but, you know, good feelings about these desires. But below the surface, if I really started to dig, there was a lot of guilt, there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of anxiety about really claiming my desires and being unapologetic about them. Being unapologetic about your desires means that you don't feel bad about them. You don't feel shameful about having them. You don't feel guilty. There's no fear, laced within your desires. And I knew that I wasn't at that point. I knew that there was a lot that I needed to let go of. And so when it came to really, making my desires a non-negotiable, I felt I got to a point where I wasn't going all in because there was a part of me that was still scared, still feeling guilty, still not really fully claiming my desires. Another thing that I've also recognized is this fear of being successful. Often we say, I have this desire to manifest more success. I want a really successful business. I want it to grow massively. I want to have, lots of clients or lots of sales. I want, this incredible team. And yes, when we're kind of just daydreaming and visioning up this sort of what we want our business or our futures to look like, it can feel fun, it can feel exciting. But then when we often get into the reality of that, it's the repercussions of that success. What I realized was that for me, success also came with a lot of responsibility. I started to think about, well, if I have this wildly successful business, and let's say, for example, so one of the things that I wanted was when I launched the Clique Academy, our coach certification program, I could see in the back of my mind, 1,000 people have joined this program. And that was something, at the time of recording this podcast, that was something that we achieved at the beginning of this year. So the beginning of 2022, we had over 1,000 people come through our coach training program. So I had manifested this. I definitely was something that I wanted. But I know when I first set this goal, when I first developed the Clique Academy and set this goal of 1,000 people, that came with a lot of resistance. Because I started to think, well, imagine 1,000 people that you are responsible for that have joined your program. Yes, it's exciting, but it's that pressure of, I want to be able to give them this incredible experience. I want to be able to help them become the best coaches they can be and create their best lives and create these really abundant businesses. And that kind of pressure sometimes can actually hold you back from going all in because you want it, you want to be successful, but it's like, oh, what if I get there and what if I fail them? Or, what if somebody doesn't have this amazing experience? So it's kind of like wanting your desires, but simultaneously being afraid of what having those desires will ultimately mean for you. When I used to think as well about growing out a team, again, a desire. I'd love to have a team of amazing coaches supporting our students. I'd love to have, behind the scenes support so I can kind of really show up in my role as the CEO of my company. That felt exciting, but simultaneously it was that responsibility for others. It was the fears around managing a team and what that would mean. It was me having to not just show up as the creative and coach within my business, but also somebody that could hire people, potentially even fire people, and, really sort of manage the dynamics of what a team actually looks like. So, yeah, sometimes I guess what I'm trying to get at is that sometimes we have these desires, but if we start to really peel back the layers, there's still a lot of resistance that we perhaps aren't recognizing when it comes to those desires. Now, I guess the final biggie, and this is something that I perhaps am still working through. It still is one of those things that creeps up for me every now and again. And it normally tends to creep up for me when I have a huge win within my business. So when I've kind of set myself a really sort of pivotal, big goal within my business, and I get there and I allow myself to celebrate, and then this fear creeps in. And it is the fear of having everything only to lose it all. What if I build for myself this really successful business, this incredible lifestyle? I, get myself to this place where I'm, financially successful, financially secure, but then something comes along to just take all that away and to destroy it. That in itself, it's almost that feeling of I'd rather not have it at all. If I'm going to have it and then lose it, that for me feels scarier than just never have actually having experienced it in the first place. So maybe you resonate with some of these fears, some of these, these feelings about success and about having money. What's really important is, first of all, you have this recognition. It's not something that just is left beneath the surface. So start asking yourself, what is it that I'm afraid of when it comes to success? What am I scared of when it comes to making money? What is the possible downside of getting everything I've ever asked for? When I think about manifesting all of those desires, is there anything negative that I'm feeling as a result of that? Guilt, shame, pressure, fear. What is it that's going on for me? Because then when you kind of get clear on what's really going on for you, you can really start to face up to some of those fears, and you can start to challenge some of those fears. So that's a really good place to start when it comes to really releasing some of that resistance. It's to start challenging those fears, or perhaps even accepting those fears, reframing those fears, trying to see those fears in a different light. So take, for example, the fear that I had regarding, my parents and feeling guilty for wanting more. Well, what could be the alternative there? I could actually see that, what they provided for me, rather than me saying that wasn't enough, changing my perspective and saying at that time that was everything that I needed in that moment, because exactly what they were giving to me right back then has helped me become who I am today. And it's natural that we always want to provide for the next generation a better life than the one that came previously. A big part of, I think, human fulfillment is this feeling of progression. Okay, and so for me, I had to really change my perspective and say, well, what if they don't, feel bad that I want more? What if instead they feel pride? They feel that they've done a good job by giving me the upbringing that they did, because look at what I'm now able to go and create for the next generation, for their grandchildren. So it's kind of replacing what I was originally feeling and trying to see things in a different perspective. Again, like looking at some of the fears that I had and challenging them. How could I perhaps see these fears in a different way? So, for example, that feeling of being different, that feeling of, okay, well, what if I lose relationships because I've had to step into this new identity to manifest my desires? Well, maybe you will lose relationships, and that is completely natural. Not every single relationship that you have in the course of your life is going to last a lifetime. And we know this. But equally, you're going to get new relationships as well. And the people that are meant to be in your life for a lifetime will stick around. What if people see you step into your new identity and you inspire them to show up for themselves and their lives in a different way? Rather than seeing you as, oh, well, she thinks she's better than us now. What if instead you become an inspiration to your loved ones? What if you trigger change within the people around you? By you shining your light in the brightest possible way, you inspire others to then do the same. So it's really about changing your perspective, looking at your fears, looking at your resistance, looking at anything negative you're feeling and thinking, well, how can I see this in a different way? How can I start to tell a different story so this narrative at the moment doesn't hold me back? So I'd love to know, let me know, reach out on Instagram. Do you resonate with any of this at all? And how are you dealing with it? How are you getting through that resistance? Have you tried any of the things that I've mentioned? Have you tried looking at things in a different perspective? And if not, what else is working for you? Yeah, I'd love to know. Reach out to me, Dani_Watson_coaching. And again, if you just want to say hello, that's great as well. I love receiving your messages to let me know how much you're enjoying the podcast and your recommendations for topics that you would like to hear more of. And I just love connecting with you guys over on Instagram. So definitely come and say hello. I will let you go and enjoy the rest of your week, ladies, wherever you are in the world, and I will catch you on the next episode.
If you are wanting to build your own successful online coaching business, make sure to check out Freedom, Abundance and Impact, our free 10-day business and mindset course for coaches and aspiring coaches. To access, simply head to wearetheclique.com and click free course in the menu.